seemed like Dre tried to make himself seem like the man. You know, he turned himself into a gangster. And everybody know that's not Dre's character.
No, it was not true to the story.
Okay.
Here's why it was not true to the story. That last 2 years of his life, Eazy-E was smoking hot. Even though he was sick, he was happy as hell.
The true story tagline is one of the oldest tricks in Hollywood's playbook, and it worked like a charm for Straight Outta Compton. The movie was a massive box office hit, and critics showered it with praise. But underneath all that success was a growing wave of backlash, with people pointing out that the film delivered a one-sided, heavily agenda-driven version of history, a version that flat out ignored the truth. For a lot of people who actually knew the real story, the movie didn't just bend a few facts here and there.
Eazy getting beat up by
you
Sean
know.
and his people.
You don't want that problem.
Well,
I wouldn't want that problem.
No, it was not true to the story.
Okay.
Here's why it was not true to the story. That last 2 years of his life, Eazy-E was smoking hot. Even though he was sick, he was happy as hell.
I watched that movie and stuff like that. I don't think that shit true because Eazy-E had the whole Alondra behind him.
It helped spread outright myths and lies about Eazy-E, a man who is no longer around to defend himself. And when you dig into who shaped the story behind the scenes, that slant starts to make sense. The narrative was largely controlled by Dr. Dre and Ice Cube. And if you know N.W.A history, you know Dre and Eazy-E did not get along in their later years. Their beef was one of the driving forces behind the infamous Ruthless Records versus Death Row Records war. In Dre's version of the story, Eazy-E gets painted in the worst possible light, as a bitter, foul-mouthed troublemaker, a naive pushover who got played, or a small-time hustler hiding behind ghostwriters while secretly backstabbing his own friends. It's not a flattering picture, and according to the people who were actually close to him, it's not an accurate one either.
It seemed like Dre tried to make himself seem like the man. You know, he turned himself into a gangster. And everybody know that's not Dre.
Because the people who really knew Eazy tell a completely different story. They remember a complex, layered, kind-hearted man, not some one-dimensional villain conveniently created for a movie script. And they'll also tell you he was absolutely not someone you wanted to underestimate. Another major criticism aimed at the film is how it built up Dr. Dre into this almost superhero-like figure in rap history, a portrayal that a lot of longtime fans say just doesn't add up. Plenty of people have pointed out that Dre's darker side, including his well-documented history of violence toward women, was conveniently left completely out of the film. So there's clearly a lot more going on here than what made it to the big screen. Let's break it all down. One of the most talked about, most emotional moments in Straight Outta Compton is how the film portrays Eazy-E's final days. There's a dramatic scene where Eazy completely breaks down in tears after learning he's been diagnosed with HIV. But people who were actually with him during that time have called the scene a complete exaggeration.
Eazy wasn't the type of dude you can just say anything to, talk to any kind of way. So the fact that they made him look more docile than he was, I didn't.
Are you still friends with your group?
A couple of them. Ice Cube, MC Ren, and Yella.
Okay, what about the other one?
Who? Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
G stuff come from the concrete, and that's the streets, which he was never from the streets.
Okay.
Members of Bone Thugs and Harmony, who stayed by Eazy's side until the very end, said that's simply not how things went down. According to them, Eazy never wallowed in despair, and he never let the diagnosis crush his spirit. Instead, he stayed true to who he was, handling an incredibly difficult situation with strength, composure, and determination, even in his final days on this earth. Now, to be fair, of course, Eazy felt some sadness about his condition. He was young, successful, and had everything to live for. But the overly dramatic, almost theatrical portrayal shown in the movie didn't match what the people closest to him actually witnessed. It really does seem like the filmmakers took creative liberties to make the scene hit harder emotionally.
Only reason my people affiliate him with the streets is through me.
Grabbed me by my hair and started slamming me up against the wall.
Okay. Here's why it was not true to the story. That last 2 years of his life, Eazy-E was smoking hot. Even though he was sick, he was happy as hell. He had Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Even if it meant painting a picture that didn't line up with reality. Another glaring and frankly insulting issue with the movie is the claim that Eazy was broke during his final years. The film shows him supposedly downgrading his lifestyle, moving into a smaller, more modest house and struggling financially before his tragedy. But according to people like BG Knockout, who was close to Eazy, that couldn't be further from the truth. Eazy was anything but broke. His company, Ruthless Records, was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He had a thriving bank account, the #1 group and album in the entire country, and multiple properties. Not some sad, downsized single house like the movie wants you to believe. To put it in perspective, Eazy-E was reportedly worth around $50 million at the time of his passing, with Ruthless Records itself valued at roughly $30 million. He owned a collection of homes spread across some of the most desirable areas in Southern California: Norwalk, Topanga, Westlake, Calabasas, and Woodland Hills. His Woodland Hills property was especially luxurious, perched high on a hill with stunning views and tucked away from the noise of the city.
I don't like how it was portrayed that Eazy-E was like, he was like broke and like stressing, like when he died, because like we didn't get that.
Try to make him look like he was broke. He bought weed and all this and to start slanging. All that shit was, his company was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. His bank account was still flooded. He had Bone, he had the #1 group. You know what I'm saying? The #1 album.
But Eazy wasn't just about flashing money. He was also a deeply dedicated father who spared no expense when it came to his kids. He reportedly spent over $20,000 a year per child on private Christian Montessori schooling and more than $50,000 a month on child support. On top of that, he went completely all out for birthdays, showering his kids with designer clothes, jewelry, and the latest toys on the market. According to his son Eric Jr., they even used to spend quality time together just playing Sonic the Hedgehog like any normal father and son. Beyond being a father and one of the most influential rappers in the game, Eazy was also a sharp businessman with a real eye for opportunity. He was involved in a wide range of ventures, everything from creating a comic book series called The Hood alongside Rob Liefeld, the co-creator of Deadpool, to developing his own line of speakers called Eazy-E's Bass Shakers. He also had plans for a video game, a screenplay titled Smiling Faces, and even the idea of opening his own film studio. In 1994, he launched the Ruthless radio show on KDAY's 92.3 The Beat, and it quickly became a massive hit, topping the ratings in its time slot. According to FBI files, Ruthless Records was pulling in over $10 million a month in revenue around the time of Eazy's tragedy in 1995. The label became the very first independent record company in history to outsell the major labels, a genuinely historic business achievement that rarely gets mentioned. Even after his passing, Eazy's legacy and business empire lived on. His widow still owns N.W.A.'s catalog, and royalty checks from old Ruthless artists have continued flowing into his estate for decades. With the explosion of streaming platforms, Eazy's music and business ventures are likely to keep generating revenue for generations. So the idea of portraying Eazy as broke in the movie simply does not add up.
I don't get like why they put that in the movie. So to me, it seemed like they was trying to skew his legacy.
Achievement for all the inner city kids to be here? Yeah, I think so. I know so.
Mouth. Beat up.
Yeah,
By
you
Shug
know.
and his people.
You don't want that problem.
Well,
I wouldn't want that.
BG Knockout has openly suggested the portrayal was intentional, a calculated way for Dr. Dre and others involved in making the film to reshape and skew Eazy's legacy. Another side of Eazy-E that Straight Outta Compton completely erased was his selfless, generous, and giving nature. People who actually knew him constantly talk about how he had an enormous heart and a genuine soft spot for anyone that society had overlooked or forgotten about. Whether it was small, quiet acts of kindness or big, grand gestures, Eazy showed his empathy again and again throughout his life. For instance, right in his own neighborhood, Eazy would buy ice cream for the kids running around Compton or spend hours skateboarding with younger kids in Calabasas. But it wasn't just the small stuff. During the holidays, Eazy would dress up as Santa Claus to hand out gifts personally, and he made sure struggling families had turkeys on the table for Thanksgiving. And he didn't stop there. He'd take the children of his own employees on trips to Disney, and he'd spend over $600 on merch just to make those moments extra special for them. He was always looking for ways to expose kids to opportunities they might never otherwise get.
I watched that movie and stuff like that. I don't think that shit true because Eazy-E had the whole Alondra behind him.
The brown side, and then he ended up signing Kid Frost, and we ended up working on the brown side of record, you know what I mean? And you know, that was...
We got to Ruthless when the Death Row Ruthless beef was cracking. So they thought they were gonna overpower my boy because my boy was by himself. But you know, Destiny's a mother.
He sponsored rodeo events specifically to introduce inner city youth to new cultural experiences. And he spent his own time talking to incarcerated teens, encouraging them to turn their lives around and become better people. And it wasn't just his time that he gave freely. Eazy also donated significant amounts of money to causes he genuinely believed in. He supported charities like City of Hope Memorial Hospital, took part in the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and was heavily involved with athletes and entertainers for kids. His generosity and reputation even earned him an invitation to a 2-day conference and fundraising event hosted by President George H.W. Bush back in 1991. But maybe one story sums up who Eazy really was better than anything else. Cocaine, a member of the group Above the Law, once shared how Eazy literally saved his kids' lives. Cocaine's twins were born prematurely and needed an extremely expensive operation just to survive.
Story short, we told E, we rolling with you, fool. We got your back. What's cracking with this Death Row Roof? Who you want gone? Cause we ain't around. You're like 15? All right, don't worry about it, E. I'm gonna send my little young juvenile torpedo so they can go ahead and do YA life. They're gonna let my boys out when they're 22 years old.
Without hesitation, Eazy canceled an important business meeting, drove all the way from Calabasas out to Fontana, and personally handed over $30,000 to cover the medical bills. I honor that brother to this day. Cocaine said, Eazy had a rare gift for seeing potential in people that they couldn't always see in themselves. He pushed people to aim higher, to be better than they ever thought they could be. But the movie never showed this side of him, not even a glimpse. Instead, it painted Eazy as a pushover, which honestly couldn't be further from the reality of who he was. One of the most laughably inaccurate moments in Straight Outta Compton is the scene where Suge Knight supposedly intimidates Eazy into signing over Dr. Dre's contract to Death Row Records.
Everywhere he went, he called his Mexicans. He called Brown Brothers. Where you at? What's cracking? Swoop up over here, come in the Lolos. He be in Beverly Hills at an expensive restaurant, 27 days. They claimed Death Row, waiting for their cars to pull up because they were leaving the Cheesecake Factory. Right when my boy E walked past them, they all surrounded him. What's up? And they were...
In the film, Suge is shown slapping Eazy around and bullying him into handing Dre over. But anyone who genuinely knew Eazy will tell you this portrayal is pure fiction from start to finish. Eazy simply was not the type of guy you could push around. He had deep, real connections with some of the most serious and dangerous figures out there, including the Crips and even the Mexican Mafia. Eazy was heavily tied to the Southside Crips, who were a major force in Compton at the time. One of his most important connections was with Keith D, a well-known figure in the Compton gang scene. Keith D's family even owned Compton Hydraulics, a car shop on Long Beach Boulevard. This wasn't just some place for car repairs, it was a hub where street culture, music, and business all overlapped constantly. Eazy grew up right in the middle of Southside Crip territory in the Kelly Park Compton Crip neighborhood. His close ties to Keith D's brother Kevin pulled him into that circle in a way that went beyond music. In 1993, when Eazy filmed the video for his diss track Real Motherfucking G's, he wasn't just throwing subliminal shots, he was making a public statement. The video is packed with imagery tying Eazy directly to the Southside Crips.
All of a sudden, them 7, 8 looked around like, where's around? They thought they were at a Mexican soccer field surrounded by Mexican soccer players, but it was us.
Cube of N.W.A. will be hanging out with him and all his homies at his house.
We'll be back after these commercials or breaks or cuts or whatever. You know. Whatever.
Don't go in.
Ice Cube gonna pump it up. I got all suckers 100 miles an hour. Like to give a shout out to the deal.
One standout car, known as the Gangsta of Love, reportedly belonged to either a prominent Southside Crip named Big Spank or someone from Keef D's own family. The people featured throughout the video weren't just random extras hired for the day. They were genuinely part of Eazy's world. Some of them were throwing up Southside Crip signs on camera, rocking Seattle Mariners hats, a known Crip emblem thanks to the S for Southside, and decked out head to toe in blue, the gang's signature color. Eazy himself sported a blue Mariners cap with a yellow S, cementing his affiliation right there in plain view for anyone paying attention. Adding even more weight to this was BG Knockout, whose crew backed Eazy fiercely, making it clear that he wasn't someone you could mess with lightly.
It's a painful and traumatic experience.
I hope she did it again. She got beat down. The host of that show did something that she knows she did and got beat down, and I hope it happened again.
Both BG Knockout and Keef D have dismissed the idea of Suge Knight ever laying a hand on Eazy. For them, the slap story is pure Hollywood fiction. After all, Suge would have been risking an all-out war with the Southside Crips. Eazy also had strong connections to Mexican gangs, and years later, he would go on to cement that relationship in a huge way when he signed Brownside, a Chicano rap group led by the late Toker, along with another groundbreaking Mexican rapper, Kid Frost. At a time when Latino rap wasn't being taken seriously by the mainstream music industry at all, Eazy-E saw something that almost nobody else did. He was ahead of his time, and he correctly foresaw that the Chicano rap movement was going to become a real force to be reckoned with. Brownside, in particular, was something truly special. Under Eazy's guidance, they became genuine pioneers of Chicano rap, laying down the blueprint for how the entire genre would sound and feel. But Brownside wasn't just another rap group cashing in on a trend. These were real gangsters, straight out of the streets. Everything they rapped about was authentic. No exaggerations, no clout chasing, just raw, real-life experiences. One of the most legendary stories about Brownside's loyalty to Eazy comes straight from the height of the infamous Ruthless Records versus Death Row Records beef. The war between Eazy-E and Suge Knight was no joke whatsoever. Death Row was known industry-wide for being aggressive, and Suge Knight's reputation for intimidation was very well earned by that point. But as Toker later explained, Brownside played a huge role in keeping Eazy safe throughout this dangerous period. According to Toker, he and the rest of the Brownside crew showed up at Ruthless Records right when tensions between Eazy and Suge were reaching a boiling point. Toker described it as almost feeling like fate. Death Row's crew had apparently assumed they could overpower Eazy because they figured he was alone that day. They were wrong. Brownside was already there, ready to ride for Eazy without hesitation. Toker said they let Eazy know straight up, "We're here and we're ready to back you up no matter what." He also said that during one of their private conversations, they told Eazy plainly, "If there's anyone you want gone, just say the word." Eazy tried to brush the offer off. He told them, "It's not like that, man." But Toker wasn't having it. He looked Eazy in the eye and said, "Nah, it's exactly like that." Toker made it clear that if Eazy simply mentioned a name, they would handle it, no questions asked. Toker even said they had youngins, kids who were only 15 or 16 years old, who were ready to step up. In his own words, at most they'll let them out when they're 22, so you don't gotta worry about a thing. Eazy knew he had an army standing behind him wherever he went. Fancy restaurants, important meetings, high-profile events. No matter the occasion, he'd call up Brownside and his Mexican homies to roll with him. They weren't just there for show. These guys were ready for anything, practically hoping to run into someone from Death Row so they could prove to Eazy, once and for all, that they had his back until the end. According to Toker, there was one moment when Eazy was chilling at a cheesecake factory when about 7 or 8 guys claiming affiliation with Death Row suddenly appeared. They surrounded Eazy, clearly trying to intimidate him in public, probably assuming they'd caught him alone and vulnerable, but they had no idea what they had just walked into. Out of nowhere, the situation flipped. The death row guys found themselves the ones surrounded, and not by a handful of people either. Toker described the scene as feeling like standing in the middle of a Mexican soccer stadium. The entire place filled with Mexican gang members who showed up to protect Eazy, real, hardened gangsters who did not play around. The death row affiliates realized they were completely surrounded. The intimidation flipped on them instantly, and they knew they were outnumbered. Without wasting a second, they scrambled out, jumped into their cars, and sped off. Toker and the crew didn't let them slip away quietly. Toker told them, "In case y'all want to come back, you're more than welcome. We'll be right here waiting." It was a statement that made it clear Eazy-E was never truly alone. Another thing that felt seriously off about Straight Outta Compton was how Dr. Dre was painted as this almost flawless superhero-like figure throughout the entire rap world. It just doesn't add up once you look at the full, unfiltered picture. A lot of people have called out how the movie conveniently and quite deliberately left out the darker side of Dre, especially his well-documented history of violence toward women. One glaring example of this is what happened with Dee Barnes. At the time, she was a presenter on the Fox TV show Pump It Up, which covered hip-hop culture and regularly featured big-name rappers from across the industry. By the time the whole Ice Cube drama kicked off, Dee had already interviewed N.W.A multiple times over the years. She was familiar with the entire crew and had covered them consistently on her show. But once Cube left the group, things shifted dramatically. N.W.A responded by dissing him hard on their track 100 Miles and Runnin', making it abundantly clear they weren't going to just let him walk away quietly. According to Dee Barnes herself, when she got the group back on Pump It Up, the energy in the room was tense from the start. Every question she asked led to another jab at Ice Cube, and things got so heated that the production team had to edit out some of the harsher moments just to make the interview watchable. But here's where things really took a turn. When the episode finally aired, it included not only the N.W.A interview, but also another clip filmed earlier on the set of Boys in the Hood featuring Yo-Yo, who was Ice Cube's friend and creative collaborator. Unexpectedly, Ice Cube ended up crashing that interview and took the opportunity to diss N.W.A right back, cleverly using their own lyrics against them. To make things worse, Cube also made fun of the D.O.C., who was close with Dr. Dre and had recently suffered a car accident that permanently damaged his voice. For the record, Dee Barnes has said she didn't think they should air that segment, but as just a presenter, she didn't have the final say. Unfortunately, the final cut sensationalized the story by playing both clips back to back. After Ice Cube's interview aired, Dee turned to the camera and casually mentioned that she always seems to end up in the middle of controversy. This was most likely just a reflexive, offhand response to an awkward situation. But in the final edit, it looked like she was intentionally stoking the flames, encouraging the beef between Ice Cube and N.W.A, and positioning herself right in the center of it. After the whole interview fiasco, some time passed, but Dr. Dre and Dee Barnes eventually crossed paths again. At a Def Jam Records party, a visibly drunk Dr. Dre spotted Dee Barnes across the room. Still furious about how the interview had been presented on television, he flew into a blind, uncontrollable rage. According to Rolling Stone reporter Alan Light, in an article titled "Beating Up the Charts," Dre picked her up by her hair and repeatedly slammed her head and the right side of her body against a brick wall near a stairway. His bodyguard reportedly held off the crowd with a gun, making sure absolutely no one could intervene to stop what was happening. Dre then attempted to throw her down the stairs, but failed. Undeterred, he began kicking her in the ribs and hands. Dee managed to escape and ran into the women's restroom, but Dre followed her, grabbed her by the hair again, and punched her in the back of the head. This brutal attack did not go unnoticed within the industry. Members of N.W.A openly discussed the incident in later interviews, and their comments were honestly shocking. MC Ren bluntly stated, "She deserved it. She had it coming." Eazy-E echoed that same sentiment, saying, "Yeah, she had it coming." Dr. Dre himself was completely unapologetic about the entire incident, saying, "People talk all this stuff, but you know, somebody messes with me, I'm gonna mess with them. I just did it, you know? Ain't nothing you can do now by talking about it. Besides, it ain't no big thing. I just threw her through a door." Dee Barnes ultimately tried to sue Dr. Dre for $22.75 million in damages, but the case was eventually settled out of court under undisclosed terms. Besides D. Barnes, plenty of other women have also come forward over the years to call out Dr. Dre for similar behavior, which just adds another painful layer of irony to him being part of a movie that twisted and reshaped Eazy-E's legacy while completely ignoring his own well-documented issues. But regardless of how twisted and one-sided Straight Outta Compton was in its portrayal of Eazy-E, his real legacy still stands strong today, decades later. No amount of creative editing, selective storytelling, or Hollywood dramatization can ever truly erase the mark that Eazy-E left on hip-hop and on the culture as a whole. The streets remember him. The people who actually knew him remember him. And no movie, no matter how big the budget or how much box office it pulled in, gets to rewrite that truth for good.